I didn't take the job because I was brave. I took it because my bank account said $14.37. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with unknown numbers, and my landlord had taped a bright red notice to my door that morning. Final warning. I peeled it off like it might explode. That same afternoon, while sitting in my car with the heat off to save gas, I opened Craigslist. I wasn't even picky anymore. Warehouse, cleanup, overnight anything. My eyes hurt from scrolling. Then I saw it. Night Watchman, temporary, $2,000 a week, cash, closed for the season amusement park, must work alone, no exceptions, do not ask questions. There was no company name, no logo, no HR email, just a phone number and a location pin dropped in the middle of nowhere. Normally, I would have laughed and kept scrolling. Instead, my stomach growled. I called. The line picked up immediately, no ringing, like someone was already waiting with their finger on the button. A man spoke. His voice was dry, flat, like he hadn't used it in a while. "You're calling about the night position?" Not a question. "Yeah," I said. "Is it still available?" A pause. I heard wind, maybe breathing. "It is," he said. "You start tonight." Don't you want to interview me?" Another pause. "You're desperate. That's enough." He gave me an address and told me to be there before sunset. Then he hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time after the call ended. My reflection looked thinner than I remembered. My eyes were bloodshot. I looked like someone who would say yes to anything. So I drove. The park was 2 hours outside the city, past the last gas station, past cell service, past any reasonable explanation for why an amusement park was built there in the first place. A rusted sign leaned crooked at the entrance. Happy Hollow Amusement Park. Half the letters were missing. The mascot painted on the sign had been sun-bleached into something unrecognizable. Its smile looked cracked. Fog rolled in low across the asphalt, thick and slow, like the ground was breathing. I parked near a chain-link gate and got out. The place was silent. No birds, no insects, just wind sliding through metal somewhere deep inside the park, a long hollow whistle. A trailer sat off to the side, lights on inside. That's where the interview was supposed to be. The door creaked when I knocked. The man from the phone call stood there. He was older than I expected, maybe late 60s. His uniform looked like it had once been a security outfit, but the patches were torn off. His name tag was blank. He didn't invite me in. He just turned and walked away. So I followed. The trailer smelled like dust and old coffee. Papers were stacked everywhere, not organized, just accumulated, like they'd been growing. He sat behind a desk and slid a manila envelope toward me. Inside was a single page. My name was already typed at the top. $2,000 a week, cash, paid at the end of each shift, 7 nights. "What happened to the last guy?" I asked. He looked at me then. Really looked. He finished his week. Something about the way he said it made my throat tighten. "Any rules?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Another pause. "Yes," he said. "Follow them." That was it. No handshake, no training, no tour. He handed me a set of keys. Heavy, old, they clinked like teeth. "Clock in at dusk. Security booth is inside the park. Log everything. Don't leave before sunrise." "Okay," I said. "What about emergencies?" His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You won't need outside help." I stepped back into the fog with the envelope under my arm and the keys in my hand. As I walked toward the gate, I glanced back. The trailer light clicked off. The park loomed ahead of me, rides frozen mid-motion, mascots slumped under tarps, metal tracks disappearing into mist. The sun was sinking fast, and for the first time since I saw the listing, I wondered what I'd just agreed to, because behind me, somewhere deep in the park, something laughed, and it sounded like it had been waiting for me. Dusk didn't fall. It sank. The light drained out of the sky like someone pulled a plug, and the fog thickened until the park felt sealed off from the rest of the world. I stood at the gate longer than I should have, keys cold in my palm, listening. Wind, metal, that same distant whistle. I unlocked the gate and stepped inside. The hinges screamed, loud, way too loud. The sound echoed down the empty midway, bouncing off closed food stalls and shuttered game booths. I waited for something to answer it. Nothing did. The park smelled wrong. Not rotten, not exactly, more like old rain soaked into rust and fabric that never dried. My shoes stuck slightly to the pavement with each step. The security booth sat dead center, a squat concrete box with thick glass windows on all sides. The light inside was already on. That should have been my first red flag. I unlocked the door and went in. The booth was small. Desk, chair, wall clock ticking too loud, a rack of monitors showing different parts of the park. Most were dark, a few flickered with static. On the desk sat a laminated binder. Security logbook. My name was written on a sticky note slapped across the front. I checked the time, 7:12 p.m. I was officially on the clock. I opened the binder. The first few pages were normal, boring even. Hourly patrols, check perimeter gates, log temperatures, note unusual sounds, do not leave booth unattended longer than 15 minutes. I actually relaxed a little. I remember laughing under my breath. Of course it's creepy, I thought. It's an abandoned amusement park. That's the whole vibe. Then I turned the page. The font changed. Not the words, the font. The letters were thicker, uneven, like they'd been retyped by someone who didn't quite remember how. Additional rules. I almost closed the book right there. Almost. Instead, I read them out loud. I don't know why. Maybe because the silence felt heavier when I didn't. Rule 1. If you hear whistling that does not match the wind, do not acknowledge it. Continue your patrol as normal. I frowned. The wind outside whistled again, right on cue. Rule 2. Do not make eye contact with the clown statue in Sector 4. If you believe you have, close your eyes and count to 30. Do not stop early. I snorted. Okay. Rule 3. If the carousel starts playing music, immediately hide in the ticket booth until it stops. Do not look at the horses. I flipped the page faster. Rule 4. If you hear children laughing after midnight, put on the noise-canceling headphones and remain seated. Do not investigate. I glanced at the hooks on the wall. A pair of bulky headphones hung there, old, yellowed, like they'd been used a lot. Rule 5. Never enter the funhouse after 12 a.m., no matter what you see inside. My skin prickled. Rule 6. If a mascot is not where you logged it last, update the log. Do not attempt to reposition it. I stopped smiling. Rule 7. Do not answer the phone. I looked at the phone on the desk. Black, corded, no label. Rule 8. If the lights flicker 3 times in a row, remain completely still until they stop. Rule 9. If you see someone who looks lost, you are already too close. I swallowed. The last rule was handwritten. The lamination bubbled over the ink like it had been added later. Rule 10. If you break a rule, refer back to the rules. They are the only thing here that wants you alive. I closed the binder. The clock ticked. Outside, something metallic groaned, slow, rhythmic, like a ride settling under its own weight. I told myself it was just atmosphere. Old place, old sounds. I grabbed the flashlight, clipped it to my belt, and stepped back out into the park to start my first patrol. The fog swallowed me almost immediately. As I walked, I passed shapes under tarps, mascots I could tell by the outlines, big heads, long arms. One of them had a hand sticking out from under the plastic, fingers curled like it had been reaching for something when they covered it up. I logged temperatures. Gates were locked. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. When I made it back to the booth, I sat down and exhaled. So far, nothing had happened. I glanced at the monitor labeled Sector 4. The clown statue stood exactly where it was supposed to be, facing the camera, smiling. And I could have sworn its eyes weren't pointed that way before.
I didn't sleep. Not that I expected to. I sat in the security booth with the binder open on the desk, pretending it was just another manual. Another boring overnight job with weird quirks, the kind you laugh about later. The clock crawled. 9 p.m. 10 p.m. Nothing happened. The monitors stayed mostly dark. The wind moved through the park in slow breaths, pushing fog around like it was thinking about where to go next. Every now and then, something clanged, a loose sign, a chain tapping a pole. Normal sounds. I forced myself to believe that. At 10:30, I grabbed the flashlight and went back out. The midway looked different at night, longer, narrower. The shadows from the rides stretched across the pavement like ribs. I passed the carousel. Its horses were frozen mid-gallop, chipped paint flaking off their teeth. Someone had draped tarps over them, but the wind kept lifting the edges, like the ride was trying to peek out. I remembered the rule. Do not look at the horses. I kept my eyes on the ground. As I walked, I logged things like a good employee. 10:42 p.m. Wind picking up, no movement. I said it out loud as I wrote it. Talking helped, made it feel less like I was alone. The whistling started around 11. At first I smiled. Wind through metal, exactly what the rule said. I even nodded to myself like I'd cracked some big mystery. Then it changed. It got closer. Not louder, just nearer. Like someone walking behind you at the same pace, always just out of reach. The tune wasn't random anymore. It repeated, 4 notes, over and over. I stopped walking. The whistling didn't stop. Rule 1 floated into my head. Do not acknowledge it. So I didn't turn around. I didn't speed up. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking like nothing was wrong, even though every instinct I had was screaming at me to run. The whistling faded after a minute. My hands were shaking when I got back to the booth. I laughed, a short, ugly sound. See, I told the empty room, nothing. Midnight came and went. No children laughing, no phone ringing, no flickering lights. I almost started to relax. That's when I noticed something small. Something stupid. On the monitor for the kiddie rides, one of the mascots wasn't logged correctly. I checked my notes, then the camera, then the notes again. The frog prince statue. It was supposed to be facing the snack stand. On the monitor, it was facing the camera, just like the clown. I zoomed in. The frog's painted eyes were glossy, reflective. Too reflective for cheap plastic. I told myself it was a camera glitch, perspective, fog messing with the depth. I logged it anyway. 12:18 a.m. Possible camera shift in Sector 2. I did not go check. Around 1 a.m., boredom crept back in, the kind that makes fear feel silly. I started scrolling my phone, even though there was no signal, just to feel normal. That's when the flashlight slipped off the desk. It hit the floor and turned on. The beam pointed straight at the window, straight at the reflection behind me. I froze. For half a second, I thought it was me, my own face pale and stretched by the glass. Then it blinked. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty booth, my reflection gone. I laughed again, louder this time. Too loud. Okay, you're tired, that's all. I picked up the flashlight and headed out for another patrol, just to prove I could, just to prove the rules were bullshit. I walked past the funhouse. The entrance gaped open, mouth-like, teeth painted crooked along the arch. Inside was pure darkness. No lights, no movement. Stay out after midnight. I kept walking. Then I did something I shouldn't have. I cut through Sector 4. The clown statue loomed ahead, taller than I remembered. Its costume was faded reds and yellows, cracked with age. One hand was raised in a wave. I kept my eyes on its shoes as I passed. The whistling started again, right behind me. My grip tightened on the flashlight. I told myself I wouldn't look. I told myself I didn't need to. But as I walked away, my reflection slid across the clown's glassy eyes, and I realized something was wrong, because in the reflection, the clown wasn't smiling anymore.
I didn't stop walking. That's the part I'm proud of. If I can be proud of anything that night. I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I didn't run. I walked, slow, measured, like my legs weren't screaming at me to do the opposite. The whistling followed me for exactly 10 steps. Then it stopped. Just cut off, like someone clamped a hand over a mouth. I waited for it to start again. It didn't. By the time I reached the security booth, my shirt was soaked through with sweat, even though the night air had turned cold. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, breathing hard, listening for anything that might tell me I wasn't alone. Nothing. The monitors flickered quietly. The clock ticked. The phone sat dead and silent on the desk. I told myself I imagined the clown's face changing. Stress, sleep deprivation, bad lighting. That's when I saw the logbook. It was open. I was sure I'd closed it. The page it was open to wasn't the rules. It was the patrol log. My handwriting stared back at me. Except there was a new entry. 1:37 a.m. Clown observed. Mood irritated. I don't remember writing that. I don't even know why I would write something like mood. My mouth went dry. I checked the time. 1:42 a.m. 5 minutes. I flipped back through the pages. Everything else looked normal. My notes, my times, my handwriting. Shaky, but mine. I convinced myself I'd just forgotten. Adrenaline does weird things to memory. I'd read that somewhere. To calm down, I decided to do something stupid. I decided to prove the rules were just there to scare people. I grabbed the flashlight and headed back out. The fog was thicker now. It clung to the ground and wrapped around my legs as I walked. The park felt closer somehow, like the paths had tightened while I wasn't looking. I told myself I wasn't going back to Sector 4. I lied. The clown statue stood exactly where it had been. Same pose, same raised hand, same smile. I stood a good 10 feet away and shined the flashlight in its chest. Just the chest, not the face. "See?" I muttered. "Still there." I turned around, took 3 steps. Then I stopped. The park had gone quiet. No wind, no metal creaking, no distant whistling. The silence felt thick, pressurized. Slowly, against every instinct I had, I turned back. The clown's head was tilted, just slightly. Not enough to be obvious, not enough to scream impossible, but enough that I knew it hadn't been like that before. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might pass out. I took a step closer without meaning to. The flashlight beam slid up, past the striped torso, past the ruffled collar. I broke the rule. I shined the light directly into the clown's face. Its eyes weren't glass. They were wet. They reflected the light too well. I could see my own face in them, stretched and terrified. And something else. A shape behind me. I spun around, flashlight whipping through the fog. Nothing. When I turned back, the clown's mouth was open. Not wide, not screaming. Just open enough to show darkness inside. I stumbled backward and fell. The flashlight clattered across the pavement, beams spinning wildly. The light swept over the clown's feet. They weren't bolted down. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't log anything, I didn't follow protocol, I didn't look back. I slammed into the booth, locked the door, and slid down against it, gasping. The monitors lit up all at once. Static, then images. The carousel cam flickered on. The horses were uncovered. Their heads were turned inward, facing the center. The music box started playing. Slow, warped, wrong. I remembered the rule. If the carousel starts playing music, hide in the ticket booth. I was already moving when I realized something that made my blood run cold. The music wasn't coming from the carousel. It was coming from directly outside the security booth. And the phone started ringing. The phone rang again. Sharp, loud, way too close. I stared at it like it might jump at me. The cord twitched slightly just from the vibration of the sound. I backed away, heart pounding, every word of Rule 7 screaming in my head. Never answer the phone. I didn't touch it. The ringing stopped on its own. That was worse. The carousel music kept playing. It wasn't cheerful, not even close. It sounded like a children's tune dragged through mud. Notes stretched too long, others cut off early, like the machine couldn't remember how the song was supposed to go. I checked the monitors with shaking hands. The carousel cam showed the ride spinning. Slowly. I was sure it had been shut down, covered, locked. I remembered the tarp. I remembered the chains. They were gone. The horses moved up and down as they turned, their heads bobbing in stiff mechanical jerks. Their mouths were frozen open in chipped grins. The poles creaked with every rotation. I felt like I was going to throw up. Rule 3. If the carousel starts playing music, immediately hide in the ticket booth until it stops. I wasn't near the ticket booth. I was in the security booth, dead center of the park, glass on all sides. The music grew louder, not through the speakers, not through the air, through the floor. I felt it vibrating up through my shoes, through my legs, like the song was being played inside the park itself. I grabbed the logbook, flipped to the rules, and read them again out loud. My voice shook. If the carousel starts playing music... The lights flickered once. Twice. 3 times. Rule 8. Remain completely still. I froze. The world narrowed to the sound of my own breathing and the carousel's warped tune. I could feel my pulse in my throat. My eyes burned, but I didn't blink. The lights steadied. The music didn't stop. Something scraped against the glass. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't look. I couldn't. The scraping moved around the booth, circling it. Nails? Metal? I couldn't tell. It made my teeth ache. Then it stopped. I waited. A shadow fell across the window in front of me. Tall, broad, wrongly shaped. I squeezed my eyes shut. Do not look at the horses. Do not look. The music shifted. It sped up. The notes tripped over each other, like the tune was excited, like it knew something I didn't. I cracked one eye open despite myself. Just a sliver. The carousel monitor zoomed in on its own. One horse filled the screen. Its head was turned outward now, facing the booth, facing me. Its painted eyes were gone. In their place were 2 dark holes that seemed to pull at my gaze. I slammed my eyes shut again, heart slamming against my ribs. "Stop," I whispered. I don't know to who. "Please stop." The scraping started again, closer this time, right at the door. The handle rattled, slowly, testing. The music cut out mid-note. The silence that followed was unbearable. I waited for the rule to tell me what to do next. It didn't. The handle stopped moving. I opened my eyes. The carousel monitor went black. All the other cameras showed nothing but fog. I stood there for a long time, afraid to move, afraid not to. Finally, I checked the time. 2:07 a.m. The music had played for 7 minutes. I wrote it down with shaking hands. 2 to 2:07 a.m. Carousel activation. Hid. Music stopped. The pen paused. I added one more line without meaning to. Do not trust the quiet. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes for just a second. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Not mechanical, not metallic. Bare feet, slapping softly against the pavement outside. They stopped right in front of the booth. A voice whispered, right against the glass. "Hey!" I didn't move. "I'm stuck," it said. A young voice, a teenager maybe, nervous, human. "Can you let me in?" I opened the logbook with trembling hands, flipping pages until I found it. Rule 9. If you see someone who looks lost, you are already too close. The knocking started. Gentle at first. Then harder. Then frantic.
Please, the voice begged. It's coming back. Something heavy shifted behind the voice, something big, and the carousel music began to play again.
Please, the voice said again. It was right outside the glass, so close I could see the fog part around the shape of a face, just an outline, a head leaned forward, breath smearing the window. I just need somewhere safe, it said. They said you'd help. They. My eyes dropped to the rules like they might physically stop me from making a mistake. Rule 9. If you see someone who looks lost, you are already too close. Rule 5. Never enter the funhouse after 12 a.m., no matter what you see inside. The knocking got louder. Hey, the voice snapped, annoyed now, less scared. Are you deaf? Something scratched the glass. Fingernails. Slow. Deliberate. I stayed in my chair. I can't, I said, my voice barely working. I'm not allowed. The silhouette stiffened. Not allowed? It repeated. The tone was wrong, too flat, like it was trying the word on. Behind the voice, the fog moved. Not drifting, parting. A taller shape passed behind the first one, something bulky. Its shadow stretched across the booth window and lingered there, unmoving. The smaller silhouette leaned closer. You really shouldn't say no, it whispered. The lights flickered once, twice. I held my breath. They didn't flicker a third time. The knocking stopped. So did the scratching. I waited for the voice to come back. It didn't. Minutes passed, maybe more. I didn't check the clock. I didn't move. Finally, I leaned forward just enough to peer out the window. No one was there. The fog had closed back in, thick and innocent looking. The booth sat alone in the middle of the midway, surrounded by empty paths and silent rides. I exhaled, long and shaky. That's it, I muttered. Just kids messing around. I almost believed it. That's when the funhouse monitor turned on. The camera showed the entrance, its painted mouth stretched open in a permanent scream. The lights inside flickered weakly, illuminating warped mirrors and hanging curtains. Something moved inside. A shape passed behind one of the mirrors. Too tall, too thin. The camera crackled. A figure stepped into view. It looked human at first glance. Hoodie, jeans, sneakers. A teenager. Relief hit me so hard my knees went weak. Idiot, I whispered to myself, just a trespasser. The figure raised its head and looked straight into the camera. Its face was wrong. Not distorted, not monstrous, just empty, like someone had erased the details. No eyes, no nose, just smooth, pale skin where a face should be. The figure lifted a hand and waved. The carousel music started again. I jumped out of my chair. Rule 5 screamed in my head, stay out of the funhouse after midnight. But if that thing was in there, if it was moving around the park, I grabbed the flashlight and keys without thinking. I'll scare it off, I said aloud. Just get it out. I unlocked the booth. The moment I stepped outside, the air felt heavier, charged, like static clung to my skin. The footsteps started again. Bare feet. Not behind me, ahead, leading toward the funhouse. I followed them. Every step closer made my stomach twist tighter. The funhouse loomed ahead, lights flickering like a dying pulse. The entrance yawned open, dark inside. The footsteps stopped at the threshold. I stopped too. Hey, I called. My voice echoed weirdly. You can't be in here. Park's closed. Silence. Then a laugh. Soft, childish, from inside. I didn't go in. You did. The lights inside the funhouse snapped on all at once. The mirrors reflected 100 versions of me, stretched and broken. My flashlight flickered uselessly in my hand.
The entrance slammed shut behind me. I spun around, heart in my throat. The door was gone. Just another mirror. The laughter echoed around me, bouncing from reflection to reflection. And then I saw it, in every mirror, standing just behind me, smiling. And I realized far too late that I had broken the rule that mattered most.
I didn't scream. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But the sound got trapped somewhere in my chest and turned into a thin, useless wheeze. The mirror showed it perfectly. Every angle, every reflection, standing inches behind me. Tall. Too tall. Its limbs bent wrong, like they were attached by guesswork instead of joints. The thing wore the shape of a teenager, but it couldn't hold it properly. The hoodie sagged as if there was nothing solid underneath. The smile was stretched far wider than any human mouth could manage, and it didn't blink. I closed my eyes. Hard. Rule 5, I whispered, like a prayer. Rule 5, Rule 5. Stay out of the fun house after midnight. I felt breath against my ear. Cold. Damp. You're already inside, it said. I bolted. I ran straight ahead, smashing through hanging curtains and bumping into railings, my shoulder slamming painfully into something hard. The funhouse warped around me, hallways twisted, floors dipped, mirrors turned corners into lies. The laughter followed, not from one place, from all directions. I burst through an exit I didn't remember entering and spilled back into the fog-covered midway. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned and my vision blurred. I slammed into the security booth and locked myself inside, hands shaking so badly I dropped the keys twice. The moment the lock clicked shut, the monitors exploded with noise. Static, screeching feedback, cameras flipping rapidly between views. Mascots. All of them. The frog prince, the clown, a bear in a cracked tuxedo, a sun mascot with peeling paint rays. They were all standing in places they hadn't been before. Not on their platforms. Not under tarps, in the paths, facing the booth. I backed away from the desk. No, I said, no, no, no. Scratching started again. Not just one sound, many. Nail files, fabric dragging, something heavy being pulled across concrete. The sounds surrounded the booth. I grabbed the logbook and flipped frantically through the pages, past the rules, past my entries, until I reached the back. There were pages I hadn't seen before. Handwritten, messy, desperate. The previous guard's diary. Day 3. They don't like it when you improvise. They notice, always. Day 4. The fun house lies. The mascots tell the truth. Don't look at their faces, but listen to where they stand. Day 5. Management says the park needs to be fed. I think they mean us. My stomach dropped. The scratching turned into knocking. Hard. Relentless. The glass fogged over from the outside. Handprints appearing one by one. Small hands, large hands, too many to count. I put on the noise-canceling headphones as laughage started again. Children's laughter. High-pitched. Gleeful. The headphones muted the sound, but not completely. I could still feel it. Vibrations through the floor. The carousel monitor flickered back on. The horse's head snapped toward the camera in unison. I ripped the headphones off. The phone rang. Once. Twice. I squeezed my eyes shut. Never answer the phone. The ringing stopped. The booth lights went out. Emergency red lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a dull glow. In that light, I saw movement outside the glass. The clown stepped forward. One step. Its feet scraped loudly against the ground. I watched, frozen, as it raised its hand and pressed it flat against the glass. The glass bowed inward slightly. It smiled wider. Behind it, the other mascots shifted, jerky, unnatural, like they were waiting for a cue. I dropped my gaze to the logbook, hands trembling, searching for anything I'd missed. One last entry was scribbled at the very end. If they get inside, you didn't lose. You were invited. The lights flickered once, twice, 3 times. Everything went still. The clown lowered its hand. The knocking stopped. The scratching faded. Silence swallowed the park. I didn't move.
Minutes passed. Then the radio on the desk crackled to life. A voice came through. Calm. Professional. It said, "Security. Report." I stared at the radio. I hadn't known it worked. The voice spoke again. "You broke the funhouse rule, but you survived. That means you're adaptable." Something heavy thumped against the side of the booth. Once. Twice. The voice continued. "Management would like to meet you." The booth door unlocked itself with a loud click, and something began pulling it open from the outside.
The door opened an inch. I slammed my shoulder into it and shoved it shut, throwing my weight against the metal until it rattled in its frame. Whatever was pulling from the outside didn't fight me. It just let go. The door clicked back into place. Locked. I slid down onto the floor, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. My eyes kept darting to the glass, expecting a face to press against it again. Nothing did. The radio hissed softly. "Good instincts," the voice said. "You're learning." I didn't answer. I reached over and turned the radio off. It turned itself back on. "You can't ignore us forever," the voice continued, patient, almost kind. "Read the rest." My gaze drifted back to the logbook. The diary pages were thicker than the rest, different paper, older, stained with something dark along the edges. I flipped past the first few frantic entries and realized something cold and awful. These weren't all from the same person. The handwriting changed every few pages. Different slants, different pressures, different voices all screaming the same quiet warnings. Guard number 12. They told me the park was closed. It isn't. It's resting. Guard number 9. Mascots don't move unless they're hungry. Guard number 4. If you hear your name, it's already too late to pretend you didn't. I felt dizzy. "How many of you were there?" I whispered. The clock ticked. The radio crackled again, even though I hadn't touched it. "Enough," the voice said. I turned another page. The entries grew more detailed, less panicked, like the writers had accepted something they couldn't change. Day 2. Management says the rules aren't punishments, they're protections. The park doesn't hate us, it needs us. Day 3. I saw them feed it tonight. Mascot placement matters. They stand where the park wants the fear to settle. Day 4. The funhouse cleans what's left. My stomach churned. A loud metallic clang echoed from somewhere near the roller coaster. The sound reverberated through the booth, rattling the desk. I flinched. Outside, something dragged slowly across the pavement, heavy, deliberate, like furniture being rearranged. I forced myself to keep reading. Day 6. You don't die right away. That's the trick. It keeps you functional, alert, afraid. Fear makes the rides work. I slammed the book shut. "No," I said. "No, no, no." The radio hissed louder. "You're doing well. Better than most at this point." "Who are you?" I demanded. A pause. Then, "We're caretakers." Another pause. "And food handlers." The lights flickered once. Twice. They held. On the monitors, the mascots began to move again. Not toward the booth, away from it. They took positions along the midway, spaced evenly, facing inward, like an audience. At the far end, the funhouse lights dimmed. The carousel slowed to a stop. A deep mechanical groan rolled through the park as something ancient shifted beneath it all. The ground vibrated faintly, like a massive engine idling to life. I opened the logbook again, flipping desperately to the final pages. There was a map taped inside the back cover, hand-drawn, routes marked in red, X's crossed out. One area circled over and over again, the pen digging so hard it tore the paper. The ghost train. Scrawled beneath it, barely legible, "This is where it eats best." The radio crackled. Mid-shift evaluation. You'll need to demonstrate compliance." "I'm not doing anything else. I'll sit here until morning." Another pause. A soft, disappointed sigh. "You won't." The scratching returned. Not at the booth. Inside the booth. Behind the walls, something moved in the ceiling, crawling slowly above my head. Dust rained down onto the desk. The phone rang again. This time, every monitor turned to static, except one. The funhouse camera. The faceless teenager stood inside, head tilted, pointing directly at the ghost train entrance. The radio spoke one last time. "You've already fed it fear. Now you have to feed it movement." The booth door unlocked again. Outside, the park lights began to turn on, one by one, leading away from the booth, leading straight to the ghost train. And from somewhere deep inside the park, something massive inhaled.
And I didn't leave the booth right away. I stood there, staring at the unlocked door like it was a trap. Because it was. Everything here was a trap dressed up as a choice. The lights outside glowed weakly, lining the path to the ghost train like runway lights guiding a plane that was already falling. The radio stayed quiet. That scared me more than when it talked. I checked the time. 3:11 a.m. I had almost 3 hours until sunrise. If sunrise mattered. I grabbed the flashlight, the logbook, and without really thinking, one of the metal poles used to prop the door open during the day. It was heavy and awkward, but it made me feel less helpless. The moment I stepped outside, the air shifted. The fog pulled back just enough to reveal the midway. The mascots stood exactly where I'd seen them on the monitors, evenly spaced, facing inward, like statues in a ritual circle. I remembered one of the diary entries. Mascot placement matters. I walked slowly, my footsteps loud in the silence. Every sound echoed too far, like the park wanted me to hear myself. I passed the frog prints first. Up close, the paint was worse than I'd thought. Cracked, bubbling. Something dark had seeped out from under the seams and dried there. The frog's head was tilted slightly, as if it were listening. I did not look at its eyes. I logged it anyway. 3:17 a.m. Frog prints relocated, facing inward. As I wrote, I heard fabric shift. Behind me, I froze. Rule 6. If a mascot is not where you logged it last, update the log. Do not attempt to reposition it. I didn't turn around. I took one step forward, then another. The sound followed. Not footsteps, a dragging shuffle, uneven like one leg didn't bend right. I reached the clown. Up close it smelled like old rubber and something sour underneath. Its smile was cracked down the middle now, a thin black line splitting the paint. One of its buttons was missing, leaving a dark hole in the costume. I logged it. 3:22 a.m. Clown statue relocated. The sound stopped. I risked a glance at the ground. 2 sets of footprints. Mine and something else's. Bare feet, standing just behind me. I didn't breathe. The logbook felt heavy in my hands. Real, solid, the only thing that felt real. Slowly, carefully, I turned my head just enough to see out of the corner of my eye. The clown had moved. It was no longer facing inward. It was facing me. Its head jerked to the side with a sharp, wet sound. Then it took a step. I ran. I don't remember deciding to. My body just did it. Adrenaline took the wheel and floored it. I sprinted down the midway, past darkened stalls and silent rides, the ghost train sign flickering ahead like a dying star. Behind me, something gave chase. Not fast, not slow, persistent. Every few steps, I heard that dragging shuffle. Too close, always too close. I didn't look back. The ghost train entrance yawned open,
its cartoon skeleton conductor grinning down at me. The lights inside pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. I crossed the threshold. The moment I did, the outside sounds cut off. No wind, no footsteps, no dragging, just silence. The ride cars sat idle on the tracks, their molded plastic seats cracked and dusty. The air inside was colder, damp, smelling of mildew and old water. I turned around. The clown stood at the entrance. It didn't come in. It just watched. Its head tilted again. Then, slowly, it raised one hand and waved. The lights flickered. The clown stepped back, out of sight. The entrance gate slammed shut. Chains rattled into place from above, locking it. The ghost train lurched. The ride powered on. The cars began to move. Slowly at first. The radio crackled inside my head even though it wasn't there. "Good," the voice said. "You're right on schedule." The car nearest me rolled forward, stopping with its door open. Waiting. I looked down at the logbook one last time. A new line was already written in fresh ink. 3:29 a.m. Subject entered feeding route. The ride's motor whined louder. From deeper inside the tunnel, something growled, low, hungry, and the car door began to close. I jumped into the car just as the door slammed shut behind me. The latch clicked. Final. The car jerked forward, metal wheels screaming against the track as the ghost train pulled me into the tunnel. The entrance light vanished behind a bend, swallowed by darkness so thick it felt solid. The air inside was wet and cold. It smelled like rust and stagnant water. I gripped the edge of the seat as the car rattled, every vibration traveling straight into my bones. "This is a ride," I whispered to myself. "Just a ride." The tunnel lights flickered on in short bursts, not enough to see clearly, just enough to show shapes. Fake cobwebs hung in tatters, cardboard tombstones leaned at crooked angles, animatronic skeletons twitched weakly, jaws clacking out of sync. Then the car slowed. The track leveled out, and the tunnel widened into a larger chamber. The lights came up. Not ride lights, work lights. Bright, harsh, exposing. The chamber looked nothing like a haunted attraction. The walls were bare concrete, stained and cracked. Thick cables ran along the ceiling and disappeared into holes drilled straight into the stone. In the center of the room stood a desk. A real one. Metal. Bolted to the floor. On it sat a phone. The same phone from the security booth. My stomach dropped. The car stopped inches from the desk. The safety bar unlocked with a soft click. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Rule 7 screamed in my head. Never answer the phone. I stayed seated. My hands trembled violently, fingers digging into the cracked plastic of the seat. The phone rang again, longer this time. The tunnel behind me shifted. Something moved in the darkness. Heavy, slow, breathing. The phone rang again. The sound cut through my skull. Each ring felt personal, demanding. I stood up. I just need information, I told myself. That's all. Maybe they'll tell me how to stop this. The ringing stopped the moment my feet hit the floor. I stared at the phone. The receiver lifted itself, just a few inches, waiting. My hand shook as I reached out. The moment I touched it, the lights shut off. The tunnel plunged into darkness. The receiver felt warm, alive. I brought it to my ear. "Hello?" I said. The word echoed back at me, distorted and layered like a dozen mouths had spoken it at once. Then the voice came through. Not management, not calm, not professional. It was laughing, high-pitched at first, then lower, deeper. It stretched into something that vibrated through the walls. "You answered," it said. The tunnel lights snapped back on. The desk was gone. The phone was gone. I was standing on the tracks, alone. Except I wasn't. The walls had changed. They weren't concrete anymore. They pulsed, wet, veined, contracting slowly like something breathing around me. The animatronics ahead began to move. Not jerky, not broken. Smooth. Too smooth. The skeleton nearest me turned its skull toward me, empty eye sockets filling with darkness that spilled out like smoke. "You broke rule too," the voice said, now coming from everywhere. "Eye contact invited you. The phone welcomed you." The tracks behind me screeched. The car I'd ridden in reversed suddenly, slamming backward into the darkness, vanishing. The exit was gone. The tunnel curved ahead, sloping downward. Something moved in the distance, large. Its footsteps made the track vibrate. I ran. The tunnel closed in as I sprinted, walls narrowing, ceiling lowering, lights exploded overhead one by one, plunging sections of the path into darkness as I passed. I heard breathing behind me, wet, excited. The laughter returned, echoing through the tunnel, overlapping itself until it sounded like a crowd. I burst into another chamber and skidded to a stop. This one was filled with mirrors, tall, narrow, bent at wrong angles. In every reflection, I saw myself running, except one. In that mirror, I was standing still, smiling. Behind that version of me stood something tall and bent, its head brushing the ceiling, its limbs folded in too many places. It leaned down, whispered into my reflection's ear. My reflection turned its head and looked straight at me. The lights went out. Something grabbed my ankle, and the phone started ringing again. I kicked hard and screamed. Something slick slid off my ankle, fingers losing their grip as I stumbled forward and crashed into a mirror. The glass shattered, shards exploding across the floor, each fragment reflecting a different version of the nightmare. The lights slammed back on. Red. Emergency lighting flooded the tunnel, painting everything in the color of raw meat. The mirrors were gone. In their place were animatronics. Dozens of them. Not just skeletons, not just ghosts, mascots, ride characters, things that didn't belong down here. Their bodies were wired directly into the walls, cables disappearing into the pulsing surface like veins. They all turned toward me at once. The sound they made wasn't a scream. It was applause. Hands clapped, plastic slapped against plastic, hollow, excited, welcoming. The radio voice came back, layered over the noise. "Hunt phase initiated," it said calmly. "Please remain in motion." The floor lurched. The track behind me rose up, twisting into a barrier of metal and teeth. Ahead, the tunnel split into multiple paths, each marked with flickering arrows painted directly onto the walls. Run, hide, play. I ran. My shoes slipped on the wet floor as I tore down the left tunnel, lungs burning, heart hammering so hard it hurt. The walls rippled as I passed, tightening, narrowing, like the park was hurting me. Behind me, things detached from the walls. I heard the wet sound of cables tearing free. Footsteps followed. Not one set. Many. Too many. Lights burst overhead, showering sparks that hissed when they hit the damp floor. Sirens wailed somewhere deep inside the ride, but the sound warped, stretching into laughter. I glanced back. That was a mistake. They were running. Mascots shouldn't run. Their movements were wrong, jerky and fluid at the same time. Their heads bobbed wildly, mouths flapping open and closed in soundless cheers. The clown was among them. Its costume was split down the side now, something pale and glistening bulging through the tear. Its smile had been ripped wider, jaw unhinged, teeth grinding together as it moved. "Faster," the radio urged. "They like it when you try." I burst through another bend and nearly collided with a security gate. It slammed down before I could reach it. Trapped. I spun, searching for another way out. The tunnel walls opened, literally opened. Panels slid apart, revealing crawl spaces, maintenance shafts, narrow gaps barely wide enough for a person. Hide. I dove into the nearest opening just as something heavy slammed into the gate behind me. The impact shook the tunnel, metal screaming. I crawled. The shaft was tight, too tight. My shoulders scraped the sides, skin tearing. The walls were warm, pulsing. I tried not to think about that. The opening snapped shut behind me, plunging the shaft into darkness. The noises outside muffled, replaced by a low, constant thrum, like a heartbeat. I crawled until my arms shook and my lungs burned, then collapsed into a small maintenance room barely larger than a closet. I lay there, gasping, listening. Something sniffed outside the wall. Slow, deliberate. A fingernail traced along the metal panel near my head. Scratch, scratch. The radio whispered inside my skull. Good hiding, but hiding is only for rest. A hatch on the far wall creaked open. Light spilled in, white, clean, too clean. I staggered toward it, half crawling, half dragging myself through. I emerged into a control room overlooking the park. The real park. The midway, the rides, the fog. Everything looked normal from here. Peaceful. The control panel in front of the window was alive with switches and dials, many of them labeled in thick black marker. Feed, route, lights, mascots. A large red button sat in the center. Reset hunt. My hands hovered over it. Outside, the park lights flickered violently. Animatronics twitched mid-path. Mascots froze where they stood. For one perfect second, everything stopped. Then I heard it. Breathing, right behind me. Careful, a voice whispered. Not the radio, not management, my own. I turned slowly. I was standing there. Another me. Same clothes, same injuries, same terrified eyes. Except this version was smiling. You don't want to reset it, he said softly. If you do, it starts looking for a new player. The window behind him shattered inward. Fog poured into the control room as something massive forced its way through the opening, metal bending, glass screaming. The lights went out. My double grabbed my wrist, and in the darkness, something else reached for both of us at once. Something pulled me backward, not my double. Something stronger. Cold fingers wrapped around my jacket and yanked me off my feet as the control room tilted violently. I slammed into the floor hard enough to knock the air out of my lungs. The red emergency lights flickered back on, bathing everything in that same raw, bleeding glow. My double was gone. The window was gone. The fog was everywhere. I crawled toward the control panel, coughing, eyes burning. The reset hunt button blinked steadily, patient, waiting. Behind me, metal screamed. Something huge forced itself through the wrecked window frame. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel it in the way the air compressed, in the way the floor vibrated under my palms. "You're running out of space," the radio said gently. I slapped the button. Nothing happened. I hit it again. The button went dark. A message scrolled across the control panel screen. Hunt completed. Subject viable. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no!" The floor beneath me shifted. Panels slid apart, dumping me down a steep chute slick with moisture. I slid fast, unable to stop, skin burning as I scraped along the sides. I was spat out onto cold concrete. The main gate. I recognized it instantly. The rusted arch, the crooked sign. Happy Hollow. Hope surged through me so hard it hurt. I scrambled to my feet and ran. The gate was right there. Chained from the outside. Thick industrial chains wrapped tight around the bars, secured with a heavy padlock that gleamed under the emergency lights. My car sat just beyond the gate, or what was left of it. All 4 tires were shredded, long, deep gashes cut clean through the rubber. The hood was dented inward like something had sat on it. The windshield was spiderwebbed, a single handprint pressed into the glass from the inside. I staggered back, shaking my head. "No," I said aloud. "You don't get to do this." Behind me, the park woke up. Lights flickered on across the midway, one section at a time. Rides groaned as power flowed back into them. Gears turned, motors whined. Animatronics screamed as they jerked to life. The carousel started spinning. The funhouse lights flashed wildly. The mascots moved. Not jerky now. Smooth, confident. They walked toward me from every direction, forming a wide semicircle that slowly closed in. The clown led them, head straight now, smile fixed and eager. The radio crackled again. Containment successful. Now comes maintenance. I backed up until my shoulders hit the gate. There has to be a way out. I did everything you wanted. A pause. Then, you did enough. The ground shook. From beneath the midway, something massive shifted. I felt it through my bones, through my teeth. A deep rumble rolled up from underground, followed by a wet, stretching sound like something waking up and unfolding itself. The mascots stopped moving. They turned, faced inward, toward the center of the park, toward the ghost train. The chains on the gate rattled. I turned back toward the park, heart pounding, mind racing. The logbook was still in my hand. I hadn't even realized I'd kept it. I flipped through it frantically, pages fluttering in the rising wind. Warnings, rules, desperate scrawls from people who'd stood exactly where I was standing now. At the very back, beneath the map of the ghost train, someone had written one last note in tiny, cramped letters. If you can't leave, you must finish the shift. The park only keeps what it thinks is unfinished. I checked the time. 4:41 a.m. Less than 2 hours until dawn, if dawn mattered. A bell rang somewhere deep inside the park. Not a ride bell, a closing bell. The mascots turned back toward me in perfect unison. The clown raised one arm and pointed down the midway, toward the ghost train. The radio spoke softly. Last task, complete the route. Enter the train, follow the ritual. I don't know the ritual, I shouted. Another pause. You will, everyone does. The lights along the path flickered on, one by one, guiding the way like a glowing spine through the fog. The park leaned inward, waiting. Something beneath the ground exhaled again. Closer now. I looked back at the gate, at my ruined car, at the dark road beyond. Then I turned around and started walking back toward the ride. Because behind me, the chains began to tighten, and somewhere inside the ghost train, something was smiling. I walked toward the ghost train like a zombie. My legs refused to obey, trembling with every step. Fog wrapped around my ankles, clinging, cold, trying to pull me backward. But I forced myself forward. One step, then another. The park was alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. Lights flickered on in sequence, marking the path. Rusted rides groaned and creaked. Animatronics jerked into position as if waiting for me to arrive. The mascots lined the path, standing rigid, faces blank, watching. The ghost train loomed ahead. Its entrance yawned like a gaping mouth, black and infinite. The doors rattled softly, inviting. The smell of wet wood and mildew poured out. I felt it crawl up my throat. I remembered the last line in the logbook. Everyone does. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. The train car was waiting. Rusted metal benches, cracked seats, cold. I climbed in, and the doors slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the car completely. The only sound was my own breathing, ragged and uneven. I flipped through the logbook again, trying to find the ritual. Pages crumpled in my hands. Then I found a small folded piece of paper taped inside the back cover. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. 1. Sit and face forward. 2. Close your eyes and call the names of the park mascots aloud. 3. Do not pause, do not stop, do not breathe. The train will guide you. 5. If you see them, do not look, only acknowledge by voice. I laughed nervously. You've got to be kidding me. Then the train lurched forward, slowly at first, then faster. I had no choice but to follow the instructions. I sat upright and stared straight ahead. My hands gripped the seat edges until my knuckles turned white. Frog prints, clown, bear, sun, whispered. The car jolted. I nearly fell over. The train twisted into a dark corridor I hadn't seen before, walls pulsating like they were alive. My voice caught, but I forced it out. Frog prints, clown, bear, sun. Something brushed past my shoulder. I froze. The air pressed against me like hands. My heart slammed against my ribs. Do not look, I whispered to myself, forcing my eyes straight ahead. The train curved sharply. Screams and laughter echoed around me, overlapping until I couldn't tell which direction they came from. I kept reciting the names. Frog prints, clown, bear, sun, carousel horse. The temperature dropped. My breath came out in visible puffs. I could hear wet footsteps circling the car, scraping against the metal floor. I almost stopped, almost paused, almost gasped. A cold, wet hand slid along the back of the seat. My voice wavered. Frog, prince, clown. The hand recoiled. The footsteps disappeared. I kept going, faster, louder, names tumbling from my lips in a frantic rhythm. The train's speed increased. Lights flickered along the track, showing broken rides, fog-filled midways, motionless mascots. They weren't moving, not yet, but I could feel their eyes on me. The logbook page tore under my trembling fingers. I barely noticed. Bear, sun, carousel, skeleton, ghost. The tunnel widened. Ahead I could see faint light. Not the sunrise, not yet, but a glow. A safe glow. The train shuddered violently. I hit my head on the metal frame. Pain shot through me. My hand slipped. The logbook fell. I kept calling the names anyway. My voice screamed through the car now, desperate, pleading. Clown, frog prince, bear, sun, carousel, skeleton, ghost train. Then the walls shuddered. Animatronic heads appeared at the edges, twisted, faceless, leaning toward me. My knees buckled. A whisper came from everywhere at once. You're almost done. The train slowed. My voice faltered. I was shaking uncontrollably. I recited the final name. Ghost train. Everything stopped. The fog cleared instantly. The lights along the track stabilized. The mascots froze in place, rigid, silent. The air stopped pressing against me. The train coasted into a small platform. The doors opened. Outside, the midway was empty, quiet, safe-looking. Too quiet. I fell forward onto the platform, shaking, sobbing. I didn't care. I didn't move. Then I saw it. The ghost train doors clicked shut behind me, as if sealing something in. And somewhere deep inside the park, I could swear I heard breathing. Not me, not human. Waiting.
The first sliver of light peeked over the horizon, weak, pale. Not enough to chase away the fog completely, but enough to make the park look almost normal. Almost. I collapsed onto the midway, knees in the damp pavement shaking uncontrollably. The rides were still, silent, rusted, broken, but still rides.
The mascots didn't move, not a twitch, not a jerky step. They were frozen in poses I could almost believe were harmless. I swallowed hard. My throat was raw from screaming. My voice was gone. My hands shook too much to pick up the logbook. Yet somehow, it was still there, open, lying face up in the dust. I stared at it. Every page was crumpled, stained, scrawled with desperate handwriting. Warnings, rituals, rules. All of them followed. All of them survived. I had survived. Somehow. The sun rose higher. Slowly light filtered through the fog. The carousel, the Ferris wheel, the fun house, even the ghost train. They all froze in place like statues mid-motion. Silent, obedient, empty. The adrenaline that had kept me running, screaming, praying all night finally left me. I collapsed flat on the ground, gasping, my body too tired to care about the wet fog, the cuts on my hands, the bruises on my arms. My head hit the pavement. I thought about closing my eyes, just for a second to let it all go. But the quiet made me uneasy. Too quiet. I forced myself to stand, slowly, carefully, step by step. My vision swam, but the rising light made it easier to see the paths, the rides, the park I had thought was alive only hours ago. The mascots remained frozen, not threatening anymore, not moving, but I knew better. I had seen what they could do. I stumbled to the security booth. The doors were unlocked now, empty, safe-looking. My logbook was gone. The radio was dead. The monitors were dark. The phone had stopped ringing. I sat in the booth for a long time, too long, listening, waiting. But the only sounds were birds, distant traffic, and the wind shifting through rusted metal. I stared at the horizon, at the pale morning light. The fog was retreating. The park seemed almost normal now. Almost like I could pretend nothing had happened. But I knew the truth. I knew what was waiting for the next shift or the next unfortunate guard. I knew the rules weren't suggestions. They weren't games. The park didn't sleep. It waited. And when night fell again, it would want more. I finally found my legs. My body moved on autopilot. Step by step, I walked out through the main gate, past the ruined car, past the shredded tires, past the empty midway. Every step I took felt like cheating death itself. When I reached the road, I looked back once. The park sat in the morning light, innocent, beautiful almost. But I knew better. I knew exactly what it was, and I didn't want to be there for its next feeding. I grabbed my bag, my clothes caked in sweat and mud, and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the highway, until the park was a distant shape behind the fog, until the first real sound of civilization broke the silence. When I stopped, I gasped for air. My hands still shook. My heart refused to calm. I didn't look back, but I knew I would never forget. The sun was fully up now, and the park, it was waiting, always waiting. I had survived the night, but the memory would last forever, and so would the fear. I never went back. I didn't call anyone. I didn't try to report what had happened. Not the police, not the media, not even a friend. Because who would believe me? An abandoned amusement park that feeds on fear? Mascots that move like they're alive? Shadows that follow your every step? Nobody would. I grabbed the cash they had promised, left in an envelope taped under the security desk. $2,000. Cold, crisp, untouched by whatever haunted that place. I stuffed it into my bag like evidence I'd rather forget. The road out of Happy Hollow was empty. Early morning fog still clung to the treetops, giving the world a muted gray filter. But the highway was open, normal, safe-looking, too safe. I stopped at a gas station 30 minutes down the road. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the nozzle. The attendant gave me a strange look when I flinched at the sound of the bell above the door. I didn't speak. I just paid and left. I thought about the logbook, about the rules, about everything the previous guards had written, about the management and the feeding, about the funhouse, the ghost train, the mascots. It would be opening again next week. I don't know why I know that. Maybe I just feel it. The way the park waits, the way it wakes when people aren't watching, the way it wants someone to follow the rules. And if I hadn't survived, someone else would have taken my place. I've been sleeping with the lights on since then. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the carousel creaking, the laughter echoing in the distance, the soft shuffle of oversized feet against the pavement. I wake up, drenched in sweat, expecting fog to press against my window. I don't drive near abandoned parks anymore. I don't take temp jobs. I don't take anything that seems too easy. And yet, I can't stop thinking about the mascots, the clown, the frog prince, the bear. They're stuck in my head, watching, waiting. I can see them in the corner of my vision, standing still, frozen in a moment that's not quite real. I've decided to post this as a warning, not because I think anyone will listen, not because it will make a difference, but because I can't carry it alone anymore. I need someone to know. Someone else has to understand what happens when the park wakes. If you see a job listing for Happy Hollow, for a night watchman position, don't. Don't even think about it. They're ready. They're patient, and they will always find someone new. I left the envelope of cash on my desk this morning. I can't tell if I was relieved or terrified. I just know it's the only proof I survived, and I'm not going back. I will never go back. Happy Hollow will open next week, and it will be hungry, and someone else will be in my seat. I hope they follow the rules, because if they don't, it won't let them leave.